Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the 6th part of my Dart Frog series. So when I very first started this series, I originally told all of you that it was going to be a 6-part series. However, I am very excited to let you all know that this series is going to continue. You know, I figured that I am going to continue to make videos about my dart frogs, so why not just continue it here in this series? So I really hope that you guys have enjoyed all of the dart frog videos up until this point, and I really hope that you are going to enjoy all of the dart frog videos to come. So today's video is going to be a complete update on all things related to my dart frogs. We are going to talk about the frogs themselves, we will talk about their tadpoles and their eggs, and then we're also going to take a look at their enclosure and all of the plants inside of it, and get an update on all of those as well. As many of you guys know, Enclosure has been sponsoring this dart frog series of mine, and they sent me a lot of the products that I used for my dart frogs, so not only am I going to be updating you all on the frogs today, but I'm also going to be updating you all on the Enclosure products and giving you guys my thoughts and opinions on them. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started with the update. Alright, so I have my fruit flies right here, so I'm going to go ahead and just put them in the frog enclosure. And now let's go ahead and talk about my frogs and get an update on them while they hunt their fruit flies. I absolutely love just sitting here watching my dart frogs hunt. They're so cool when they eat, they're just so fascinating. So I am super happy to say that both of my dart frogs are doing super well. And I do feel quite confident in saying that. I have had them for quite a few months now, and during those few months that I've had them, they have now successfully produced 2 fertile clutches for me. But obviously breeding is not the only measure of good health, so that's not the only thing I am judging them by. But these frogs have just done so well for me. Both of them seem super healthy. I've never had any health concerns at all with either of them. They're super bold and really active. I see them both out every single day and I honestly love it. I love it so much. I really have never had a reptile or amphibian or anything that is just as bold and active as these guys are, and that has really made me fall in love with dart frogs. I also still do not have names for either of these guys, and now that's not because I don't want to name them or anything. I would love to have names for them. I don't know, I haven't found anything that feels right yet, so yeah, they still don't have names, so if you guys have any name suggestions, then please feel free to comment them down below, because it's been a couple months now and these guys still don't have names. So like I mentioned, my frogs are clearly doing well enough to breed because I did get 2 fertile clutches from them, so why don't we go ahead and check on my dart frogs babies. So these 3 containers right here house all of my dart frog tadpoles and eggs. I figured it probably makes the most sense to just talk about these containers one by one, so let's go ahead and we will start with this one right here. So this container here houses 3 of my dart frog tadpoles, and now all 3 of these ones were from the very first clutch that my pair laid. If I remember correctly, these eggs were laid on October 28th and then they hatched about 3 weeks later. So these 3 tadpoles right here are all doing fantastic. They have all been growing really fast, particularly this one right here. I'm thinking I might actually end up separating all 3 of them into their own separate containers, because I have noticed that, especially over the past few days, this one tadpole right here seems to be growing a lot faster than the other 2, so I might separate them so then they don't really have any competition going on. But as of right now, they are all doing really well. They are growing really fast, and I do figure that they will start to grow some legs soon, especially that big one right there. It has been really exciting getting to watch the tadpoles grow. When I was a kid, I was like obsessed with frogs and tadpoles, and I used to love catching tadpoles and raising them into frogs, so getting to do this with like poison dart frogs that I'm breeding myself is a super cool experience. Now, this container right here houses the 4th tadpole that was born from the first clutch of eggs, but unfortunately this one is not doing as well as its other siblings. As you can see, I did separate it into its own container. I did do that about a week ago, maybe a little bit more, because this one has basically just not grown at all since it's hatched. I honestly don't know if it is even eaten at all, because I don't really think I've found any poops or anything in the container, but it is still alive, so as long as it is still alive, I'm going to continue to care for it and try to get it to start eating. But unfortunately, I don't have the highest hopes for this one, but maybe it'll prove me wrong. We can hope. So now this is really exciting because this container here houses the 2nd clutch of eggs that I got from my dart frogs that were laid on November 28th, and these tadpoles actually just very recently started hatching out of their eggs. So it is a bit hard to see, but there is actually 3 tadpoles here. You know, these 2 are really easy to see, but there is actually a 3rd tadpole that is on the leaf there. It is just hard to see because the leaf is so dark that the tadpole basically just blends right into it, but there is a total of 3 tadpoles there. I don't really know what else to say about these ones because, like I said, they are just starting to hatch. It's not like they've really been living tadpoles for very long. Did you just see that little wiggle? That was so cute. But yeah, like it's not like they've been tadpoles for very long, so like I haven't even fed them or anything, so I don't really have any updates on them other than they are hatching, so that's cool. And now just so you guys can see a size comparison of the 2 tadpoles, these ones basically have like a month between them. Their eggs were laid exactly a month apart. These ones were laid on October 28th and these ones were laid on November 28th, so that is how much the tadpoles grow in just like a month, so it's pretty crazy how fast they grow. Now that we've talked about the frogs and the tadpoles, let's go ahead and talk about the enclosure. Exoterra is very kindly sponsoring this series, and they sent me a bunch of products from their new Frogs & Co line to try out with my frogs. And I want to update you all on the products that I received and how they are doing, starting with this enclosure right here. So far, I really only have good things to say about this enclosure here. I am genuinely a big fan. These enclosures were designed with frog keeping in mind, and they definitely do work well. The only modification that I had to make was adding a little bit of plastic wrap over the screen part of the lid to hold in a little bit more humidity. It was a super simple modification that I did, and it has worked perfectly ever since. Now, these lids here were designed to hold in humidity, which they do pretty well, but I did want a little bit extra. I am also a huge fan of how easy it is to see inside of the enclosure. I mean, you guys can see that right now. As you can see, there's only the 1 large door as opposed to 2. You know, if we look at this other Exoterra that I have right next to it, it has 2 doors and it has this split down the door, which kind of interrupts the view a little bit. So I really do love that the view of the enclosure doesn't get obstructed really at all. I absolutely love the fact that this enclosure here has a drain. And I also love that the drain is super easy to use. I drain this enclosure here about once a week, and all I have to do is flip this valve, let it drain for a minute, and then I am done. The drain is honestly such a game changer. Overall, I am a big fan of this enclosure, and it really has been working super well for my frogs. Alright, so now let's move on from the enclosure and let's go ahead and talk about the plants. Okay, and now I want to go ahead and talk about the plants in here, and oh my goodness, I have a lot to say, and thankfully I have a lot of good things to say. I am honestly genuinely surprised with how well all of the plants have been doing in here, and it really makes me so happy. I don't really think I have had a single issue with any of the plants at all. For the most part, they have all just been doing phenomenal. I mean, we can definitely start out by talking about this begonia thelma here because it has just taken over the tank. When I first planted this plant in here, it was like 2 tiny little stalks. I put one right here and one right there. Each stalk had like 4 or 5 leaves on it, and for the first few weeks I didn't even think the plant was going to survive because it was just not doing well at first. However, you can definitely see that that was not the case. The plant just absolutely started exploding. When I first set up this enclosure here, I actually had a Tradescantia zebrina planted in this area right here behind the black velvet alocasia. However, that plant just started taking over the tank so fast that I just decided it was going to be best to remove it and replace it with something else. And if I'm being completely honest, it's not my favorite looking plant either, so I am definitely happy with my choice to replace it. So the alocasia black velvet was always here, but the philodendron micans was not. So when I removed the Tradescantia, I replaced it with this philodendron here, and I'm definitely very happy with my choice to do that. I think that philodendron micans is a super gorgeous plant, so this is going to look absolutely stunning once it grows in a little bit more. And speaking of philodendron micans, I do have another one planted in the very back of the enclosure here. When I very first planted this one in here, you could hardly see it because it was mostly hidden behind this piece of wood right here. But thankfully the plant is doing exactly what I wanted it to do, and it has started growing up the background, and you can now see its beautiful leaves just by looking in the enclosure. Now let's talk about our plants up here because these ones are both reaching the top of the enclosure. So on the back there we have a bromeliad, which is doing super well. Ever since I moved it up onto the background, the root system has just exploded on that thing. And now if you take a look next to the bromeliad, you can see my angel wing begonia here that is very much hitting the top of the enclosure. So this angel wing begonia here is going to be getting a chop along with the begonia thelmae because basically all of the growth on this begonia is at the very top. You can see that the begonia does have this stem here that did used to have a lot of leaves on it, but they did all fall off, and that's basically just from when I very first planted the plant in here. When I first planted it in here, it did have quite a bit of die-off and it lost a lot of its leaves. But then it grew a bunch of new ones, but as you can see, they are very high up, so I am going to cut this plant down by the base, and then that is going to trigger it to start growing some new leaves lower down. You can actually see that happening with this other angel wing begonia that's in the very back here. This one used to be tall as well, and I didn't actually cut this one, but it did break on accident and has now started growing back. But as you can see, the growth is all lower down and it is not hitting the top of the enclosure, so that's what I want from the other one. So yeah, we will be chopping it soon. And now check this out because I have a super exciting update for this Monstera dubia here. This Monstera dubia made me nervous for so long. I didn't think it was gonna survive. I'd had it in here for months and months and just nothing was happening, but finally, it has a tiny little bit of new growth at the top. Finally, this Monstera dubia is growing, and I am so excited about that. And now, lastly, let's talk about the plants on the ground like the Pilia depressa and the moss. Like most of the other plants in here, these ones are all doing fantastic as well. The Pilia depressa has really grown over the floor of the enclosure, and I am honestly obsessed with it. I think it looks so good how it's grown in and just kind of taken over some areas while leaving small little trails of the plant in other areas. I think that it's super cool, and I'm really happy that I chose to put this plant in here. I think it really adds a lot. And I'm super excited to say that the moss in this enclosure is doing really well. I do have a few different species of moss in here, and thankfully all of them seem to be doing decent. Now, there were some areas that I had the moss die off, but thankfully the moss really took off in some places, so I'm sure that in no time it will continue to spread over the tank, and I really look forward to seeing that. I think that the tanks always look so good once the moss has grown in and matured, so I'm just super excited to see that with my own tank. So something I forgot to mention when I was talking about the plants was the plant light and the substrate. Now, these are things that I wanted to talk about because, you know, your lights and your substrate are two of the most important things when it comes to having success with your plants. So on my dart frog enclosure, I've been using two Exoterra Terra skylights, and the two lights have been working absolutely fantastic. I mean, you guys saw the growth in my dart frog tank has just been incredible. It has really grown in, and obviously a lot of that has to do with the fact that I have good grow lights on it. So I definitely am enjoying these lights, and my plants seem to be enjoying them as well. And the substrate as well has been working super well. Now, for my substrate, I did use sort of like a custom mix, but I use all types of things in it, and one of the key things that I used in it was the Exoterra Substratum, and I honestly have nothing but good things to say about it. I've used this substratum in a few of my animals' enclosures, and I've also just used it in some of my houseplants, and every single plant that I have that is planted with the substratum just does phenomenal. I am very happy with that. So now, with all of that said, I am extremely happy to say that overall I am just super happy with my decision to get poison dart frogs. And I am also happy with my decision to use so many of these Frogs & Co products. As you guys can see, I have had quite a lot of success with my first frogs and my first dart frog enclosure, and I really don't think I would have been as successful as I was if I didn't have a lot of these Frogs & Co products. I have truly become obsessed with dart frogs, and I can very confidently say that I will definitely be getting more in the near future. I literally already have another dart frog tank that I purchased a few weeks ago, just sitting around empty, waiting for the right time to come for when I get some more dart frogs, so that will definitely be coming at some point in the future. So, with all of that said and done, I am going to go ahead and wrap up this video now. Once again, I want to give a big shout out to Exoterra for sponsoring this series and just making this all possible. I really appreciate it, and I have had such a good time working with Exoterra and just using their products. So I would definitely recommend checking out Exoterra and the Frogs & Co line. The link to that will be in the description down below. With all that said, I am going to go ahead and end the video now. Thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it, and I do really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It really helps me out. Also, be sure to check out all of my social media. Everything is just EmmaSam99, but it will all be down in the description below, and I would love to have you guys over there, so feel free to check that out if you want. And the last thing I want to say is just a reminder that my business Beyond the Wild is launching on January 1st, and I hope that many of you will be there for the virtual launch, so keep that in mind. With all that said and done, I'm going to go ahead and end the video now. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video.